Group of the World Championship Series here. It is Group D, and we only have 2 best-of-3s remaining. Joining me over here is In Control, and of course Todd, who always have fun on the desk, especially when you're with me. And I'm happy to have you here, I mean, I have to say that. You notice how I said that all day?
Yeah.
It's like a thing I have to say.
It's like, hey guys, sad to have you here. This kind of sucks.
I wish you were Pig. I wish you were someone else. But
you said that, but you said no offense, which really diffused it. You should have been like, I wish Pig was here.
Yeah.
And just like locked eyes with the person.
But I always have to feel very happy to have you here. So I'll say it again, happy to have you here again on my desk.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking your time out from whatever else you'd be doing at this moment.
I cast with Claire, so it was great.
You did, actually. You made some funny jokes and you had a good time.
It's like 5 minutes of, casting.
And then back over to me. Mm-hmm. You come to the better side, mate.
Yeah.
Debatable.
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 I like casting.
It's time to have a look at Group D. Back to serious business. We have 4 players that are fighting for a chance to go through to the round of 8. Match 2 has already been played earlier today on the secondary stream. Stardust closed out a very swift 2-0 over Liquid Red and finds himself in the winners match to be played in a couple of hours, or in an hour, should I say, after this one, which is going to be Petraeus from New Zealand against Evil Genius's Jaedong in a Zerg versus Zerg to determine which player has the chance to go versus Stardust into the round of 8. A fantastic group, and if you look at them individually, it's a group of players that are back in some type of way. Jaedong and Stardust both missed Season 1 due to sorting out the visas and moving over to live in America. Petraeus' first tournament in the World Championship Series, and Rhett's first time back after 2 years in the Premier League. It's like a new start for every player here, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of, it's kind of spooky how it's been themed in each group, but it certainly is true. Petraeus a little bit more of kind of an outlier there. Like, it is his first WCS. That puts him more at kind of the underdog, like, what is going to be your story kind of category. But I do like, Stardust. Think back to some of the biggest championships over at DreamHack and certainly in WCS, where he's a household name. He's one of the big ones. But yet we missed him all through Season 1. And here he is. So it's really cool to see where these guys are going to go.
Do you look at Jaedong and Stardust as the 2 clear favorites no matter what? Do we have to count out Rhett and Petraeus, or?
I don't think so. I think Red and Petraeus, they've been playing really good. It's funny because I feel like not just in the round of 16, but even in this group in particular, it feels like the comebacks, like to some extent, Stardust coming back. He's had some time, where he was a little bit inactive, not really participating in any tournaments. Jaedong, he's had his up and downs, kind of on the comeback here too, move to USA to be able to play in WCS. And then you have Red, also for a very long time, up and downs. Petraeus also had his own move to Europe to try and play in WCS, but failed last season. I think he even failed to qualify. Now finally he's performing, at the standard that we would expect out of him. So that makes it very interesting. Yeah, for some of these guys, the comeback is going to be real here.
And they will make it through to the round of 8. One of these, or 2 of these players, one today, the second one tomorrow. But let's turn our focus towards Petraeus. It's his first season in the World Championship Series. He's made it to the round of 16. And when he played, we caught up with him to have a couple of words.
This is my first time in Premier. That itself has been a struggle, just making it to the round of 32. So it's definitely what I wanted to come away with from today. And yeah, I'm still unsure how I feel about it. Advancing to the round of 16 over in Toronto, I don't know, I really thought it was something that I wanted for a long time.
Well, he's moving into a position where he's actually kind of choked up. The Blinding Clouds and Fungals hit everything in the center. The Broodlords are firing on the army. He just walked into Petraeus' death trap. The whole army doing nothing.
I don't really think the size of the crowd plays into how much nerves get to me or something like that, I guess, but obviously it's a lot more exposure, it's a lot more on the line, it's a big deal. Yeah, I guess that just means the stakes will be higher. To summarize this year, it's pretty much just been this tournament that I'm at right now, making it to the round of 16.
Ladies and gentlemen, Petraeus playing for My Insanity, who's had an interesting journey to the round of 16. If you think about his career as a StarCraft 2 player, he's been living in Europe for a long time now, Todd. He's traveled all the way from New Zealand to kind of give everything up over there to practice day in and day out in Europe. And he's known as one of the hardest workers in the European scene with the amount of practice he puts in.
Yeah, but at the same time, maybe that's what really put too much pressure on his shoulders in the previous season, where he really wasn't able to do that well. So now he seems to have maybe overcome that, in which case he might be able to do really well here, but he's against the Jaedong.
Well, what is it that makes him so good? I mean, he's a great player, he's a young talent, he's always near the top of the European ladder when pro gamers are playing at home and online. What is it about him that makes him so good, do you think?
I think he works very, very hard, like you mentioned that, and also he has his own touch, like his own style. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but like, for example, you know, against Protoss, he plays a lot with Infestors and, you know, Vipers, late game with Ultras. He actually likes the late game, which is a little bit rare. And Blinding Cloud Fungal is one of the things that he does best. So now, on ZvZ, I can't really tell you because I'm no expert, but it feels like he has his own style, which makes it difficult to play against him because he's really good at it.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to come to you after we introduce our next player because I know you're going to have a lot to say about him. And I just want you to let loose when we get around to that, Jeff, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. It's time to introduce our second player. It's no other than Evil Genius's Jaedong.
Round 32 was very hard. I played not very well because it's been a long time I didn't play on the stage, so I felt some nervous.
A never-ending stream of Zerg that's coming across this map. These probes desperately trying to do something.
I can do better because I played StarCraft over 10 years since Brood War, so I played a lot RTS game.
Why do people love you so much, Jaedong?
I don't know. I'm
Too sexy!
Yeah?
Canadian fans are really crazy, and I'm very happy I'll be there. My goal this year is win WCS tournament this season and next season.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jaedong, a big player here coming to the stage, Jeff, and he wants it more than ever now. He's been quiet, he's back playing, he's back practicing, he's here in the round of 16. He told us that he wants to win this season and the next to make sure he goes to BlizzCon. Tell us some insight on what Jaedong's been up to recently.
I think one of the coolest things about Jaedong is kind of as he's gotten, it's weird to call him older because he's actually still, what, 23 or 24. He's super young. He is like coming into his own in the sense that he moved to America for WCS, but he's not missing out on the opportunity to also like experience the world and see a little bit more. He's an avid fit nerd. He goes out and running and working out all the time, and he's his own motivator. Like he's not the kind of guy that EG or his previous teams would like go to me like, Jaedong, like, are you practicing? He would just like look at them and they would die if they ever asked that because it's a silly, stupid question. He works really, really hard, and coming here to the round of 16 again. I remember giving this kind of speech even back at BlizzCon 2 years ago, where it's like, if he's not in the top 8, top 4, top 2 probably, it's a failure to him. And that's really exciting because this group for him, I feel like with 2 other Zergs, his strongest matchup, in Stardust, a past rival, someone that's declined him from winning a tournament before, I feel like he's in a position to be an absolute monster in this group.
All right, thank you very much, In Control. We'll continue our discussions on this matchup. I'd love to hear some more thoughts on it, but it is time, and I hope you guys out there are going to be nice and loud for this one. It's time to introduce the 2 players to the stage.
All right, our Group D kicking off here on the main stage. Everyone getting pretty excited. Our first player, as we discussed earlier, he's coming all the way from New Zealand. He's here to extend his best career result so far. Playing for My Insanity, it is Petraeus. And his opponent. I am so happy to be here saying his name once again. And he says he doesn't know why you all like him, but I think you all do here and at home. It is going to be E.G. Jaedong. Let's take it right to the game. Crowd is going wild. Players, please shake each other's hands and enter the booth as we kick off Group D here at WCS Season 2 Finals.
It's been a nice and long day here within the World Championship Series for the Premier League, but we are nearing the end of it, and what a Group D to finish on with. Stardust waiting for one of these two players to advance to the winner's match. We go in to a Zerg versus Zerg between Jaedong and Petraeus. In control, thoughts on this matchup?
You know, again, looking at it, you would think, oh, Jaedong, ZvZ, this is going to be easy peasy. It's also against a foreigner, some guy named Petraeus, should be easy. But actually, Petraeus, kind of a little bit under the tutelage of Cats from Team Roots, excuse me, that's silly, is a bit of a clever Zerg versus Zerg player. They've actually played a few times. I believe it was at the TESPA tournament in Austin, Texas, where they clashed as well. And it was not such a one-sided affair. Petraeus definitely has a chance here. And in fact, when Jaedong's super confident, that's, in my history of watching all of his games, that's some of the times where he actually kind of falters. So keep your eye on Petraeus. This is a scarier ZvZ than you would maybe think.
Yeah, and if you think back to Zerg versus Zerg, this matchup, in Europe, there is very good Zerg versus Zerg players. You've got the Targa and the Snoot that Petraeus is going to be playing with a lot of the time here. Jaedong, don't really know exactly what his practice has been precisely, but we know that Petraeus is well diverse in his matchup, Todd.
Yeah, actually, I've seen him do very, very interesting stuff in ZvZ, like double Evo on Vanny, Lynx upgrades, you know, going for the fight at the third base where it's really, really hard to defend because it's wide open, doing things like this and really able to execute it well. He's a very, very smart and calculated player. So Jaedong definitely shouldn't underestimate it, and I hope to God for him that he's practiced his ZvZ really hard.
Well, here is Jaedong, of course, ranked 34 at the moment. Not the highest of ranks, but he did pick up some points before entering the Premier League for 2015. As you can see, only played 3 games, but he has won every single match so far. Challenger and 2 matches in the round of 32, where he was first place in Group H when we played in Cologne, Germany. A pretty decent overall record as well, 26 wins to 16, but it is more than just that for this man. He, because of starting late, has a lot of work to still catch up to the players that are in the top 16, Jeff.
He lives and dies by the sword. I mean, one of the ways you can kind of typify a Jaedong game is he'll take big risks. And in a short best of 3, especially against a crafty guy like this here, Petraeus, it's absolutely possible that he tries something that just does not pan out and it all spirals from there. So can Petraeus make the reads? Jaedong's willing to do some pretty crazy stuff, in particular in the ZvZ matchup. Yeah. You know, Todd talked about Petraeus doing some weird stuff, +1 melee, that kind of thing. That's definitely possible. But for me, the more pivotal storyline for him is deflecting Jaedong's tomfoolery and taking advantage of that.
Yeah, Petraeus, just 19 years of age, Todd, lives or has lived in Europe for the last year or so, originally from New Zealand. Here are the 3 maps. We have Vanny Research Station, Echo, and Coda. So we have 3 2-player maps. There's no big maps. There's no guessing where my opponent is. Todd, the first map, Vanny Research Station.
Yeah, I've talked to you a little bit about this, and you know that build that I saw him do once, which it did really, really well. You know, going for the melee, and even car pace upgrade for Zerglings, going for a timing on the third base. So he can play depending on maps. Definitely gets some very good practice with other good Zergs in Europe, and I mean, going up against somebody like Jaedong, I really like that you mentioned, Jeff, that Jaedong's also the guy that can do crazy stuff. In final games of series in ZvZ, it's like 6 or 8 pull guaranteed every time. Usually in best of 5 more than in best of 3s, but Jaedong is the guy that in final games of series has done crazy stuff.
And we'll have to look out for those very things in this services game. It is loading, it is time. Let's go into Group D and see how this is going to take shape.
Thank you very much, boys at the desk. I am so ready for this ZvZ series. I don't think my body has ever not been ready for the Dong. And of course, with me is our resident Zerg expert, Pig. Pig, you know both of these players so well, as every Zerg player has always been inspired by Jaedong's play. And Petraeus is sort of your neighbor, so talk to us. What do you expect?
Oh, this is going to be a fantastic match. I love Zerg versus Zerg. There's a lot of depth to the matchup, and with the tyrant going up against the underdog here, the newcomer. It's just a really cool contest. Two players you don't get to see playing that often coming head to head here. And it's really cool as well because these guys are both really fast, really mechanical players. And I think we're going to see both of them really trying to push each other as hard as they can.
Are you expecting identical styles, or do you really think we're going to see Petraeus push the series in a certain direction while Jaedong is really going to just try to keep it on track? Or do you think it's going to be messy, scrappy, but all about the mechanics?
I think it's going to be a scrappy match for sure. These guys both play similarly in that they love to just get in there and play the way they're comfortable. They like to probe around with their Zerglings, look for holes, look for openings. You know, there's not always that much of a premeditated plan in terms of this like really crisp, perfect style. They both play very reactively and they do a lot based on what they see.
Are you expecting Petraeus to sort of bust out something crazy in game number 1 to maybe dictate the pace of the series a little bit? Todd mentioned this as well, the analysis desk. Jaedong has showed us in the past that, you know, even though he's always been very well known for his ZvZ, we even called it JVZ for a while, but he has also shown us a lot of crazy things, and sometimes it just seems that Lady Luck is on his side when it comes to this matchup. Are you expecting him to be crazy, or do you think that Petraeus is going to be the crazier one?
It's such a hard call in a best-of-3 matchup. Both players don't want to throw away games necessarily, but Zerg vs Zerg is such a volatile matchup. It's one where you really don't want to just kind of go into it half-cocked. You want to go in there and you want to gamble a little bit. There's like a lot of small chances you can take, and you can throw out those crazy 10-pool Baneling builds and that sort of thing.
We are going to start game number 1 on the Vani Research Station as soon as it's ready. You know, it's a very interesting story. Petraeus has been a foreigner that's been hyped up quite a while. He had a very good run at the tournament last year, the Red Bull Battlegrounds in Detroit. Managed to finish top 8. I think he was the highest non-Korean at that tournament. Even defeated his teammate back then, Supernova, as Petraeus has spent some time on Root Gaming as well. And from that point on, everybody basically said like, hey, Petraeus is here. He's not gonna go anywhere. And still it has taken more than half a year for him to kind of back that result up with another deep tournament run. Why do you think that is? Because if you talk to anyone in the European ladder, everyone's like, Petraeus is a beast, man. Like, he's one of the best Zergs out there. Why is it taking another 6-7 months for him to make a significant run in a tournament like this?
It's really hard to say, and I think it goes to it's a testament towards how hard StarCraft is right now. It's just this game which, as time goes on, not only does the metagame develop, but every single player's mechanics, their skill, their understanding develops. And if you're a relative latecomer like Petraeus to the scene, in terms of its kind of grand overarching length, it's something which it takes a long time to build up. It's similar to Lilbao. It's not just about how good you are on ladder, it's about can you bring that performance to LAN, and also how many opportunities do you have. Think about Petraeus, he's a player who picked up his life in New Zealand, was sick of practicing with his 300 ping to the Korean server, moved his life to America, practiced as hard as he could, then to Europe, and he hasn't actually had that many opportunities at big LAN events. So I think he's still gaining experience, and this might be the point where he's calm enough that he can deliver the sort of skill which he has shown on ladder and he has shown in online events.
Jaedong, of course, has a completely different story going into this group, as Jaedong was not part of WCS Season 1 or the GSL for that matter, or the SSL. One of the previous years, 2013 was a legendary year for Jaedong. He was the runner-up of the WCS Grand Finals at BlizzCon. 2014 was a different year. Calling it a bad year is kind of unfair because he still did so well in so many tournaments. He still made it to BlizzCon, lost in a very, very close series against Bomber, who was a man on fire back then. And then he said, after another tournament, I think San Jose was his final tournament of 2014, he said, I'm going to take a small break. And StarCraft players often talk about, I'm going to take a small break. Jaedong didn't exaggerate. Like, his small break lasted for months. Jaedong was nowhere to be seen. Now he's back. Do you think that it's still a very realistic goal for Jaedong to make it to BlizzCon? Like, even being away the first 3-4 months of the year, can he still do that?
It's going to be a tough run for sure. He has collected some points. He's not too far down in those rankings, going to some other WCS partner events such as Gfinity and getting some decent placings in them. But I think it's really a story of, can he regain that skill? Can he get back up there? And it's great to take that off season, but it is always
yeah, he took it to the next level though. Like, a couple people, they take off a week. I'm going to spend some family time. During Christmas, I won't play. Jaedong was like, yeah, I'm going to take a small break, and he shows up in April. He's like, guys, I'm moving to San Fran. See you in Season 2. It's like, it's kind of bizarre. It's not something we see very often among pro gamers.
I think it's actually a great decision, and it shows Jaedong's experience. He's been in the scene since he was a young teenager in Korea, and I think once you reach that age where you are a true professional to the point where you are so self-motivated, as Jeff was saying before, you understand the need to take holidays, take breaks, because StarCraft is such an intense career. The practice is never-ending. There's constantly changing metagame. This isn't a simple game. It's always changing. The styles are always changing, and you need to adapt so much. I think taking that break has really invigorated Jaedong, just from seeing him, his attitude. He seems very confident, very calm. And even in the past when he was first getting back into it, his skill maybe wasn't quite up there just yet. His confidence and his ability to develop and persist, it started to show through.
Well, I'm super ready for this. I think both the players are ready. We are loading into Vani Research Station once more, where we can go ahead and kick off the second match of Group D. The winner, of course, will move on to the winners match of Group D, where Stardust is waiting, while the loser is going to have to duke it out with Liquid Red, who is waiting in the lower bracket of Group D. I think it's going to be one hell of a series. Are we going to see just another upset, or is this man, the Tyrant, going to do what we all expect him to do? Of course, he's spawning at the 6 o'clock position of Vani Research Station. Representing EG, it is Jaedong.
Facing up against his opponent, the Zerg player from New Zealand, it is Petraeus.
Now, Pig, before we're going to go crazy and talk about world orders, I just want to touch on one more subject. I really do believe that if you look at this group and you're either Petraeus or Jaedong, you look at this group and you're like, I'm going to make it out of this group. And I know they've both been very vocal about it. Like Petraeus even very recently did a huge interview where he said, yeah, I'm not actually too impressed with this group. My ZvZ is pretty good and I think I can take on Stardust. And I actually believed every single thing he said. I don't think that was false confidence. I truly believe he can make it out of this group. You agree with him?
I think it's a very sort of calm confidence, and some people, I think, reading that interview might have taken it as maybe being a little bit brash, a little bit overconfident, but I think it's a very just matter-of-fact. Petraeus accepts that a lot of these Korean players here in the World Championship Series, they are, you know, they're not benefiting from that Korean training environment. He feels like, hey, I'm on an even footing with these guys. I play all day, practicing really hard. I have what it takes to take out this game.
Well, it's a 14 pool for Jaedong and a 15 pool for Petraeus, so neither player going super economic over here in the very first game. Rather be safe than sorry?
Yeah, quite safe openings here. Of course, this map has such a long rush distance. It's very hard to get that Overlord vision to see any early pools. There's a lot of sneaky timings where you can sneak Zerglings across the map. Both players being aware of that, choosing the conservative option, both going for that spawning pool first into that hatchery.
Yeah, I had either Jeff or I believe Todd, it was on the analysis desk. They mentioned, and one style that's, you know, particularly popular on this map compared to some of the other maps is the style where you show a couple Zerglings and then you transfer a few drones. You pretend like you're going up to 3 bases, but actually you have like 20 something or so drones and you stack up a ridiculous amount of Zerglings with +1. Is that a style that you're a fan of, and do you think we're going to see it once this series?
I think the real meta at the moment, and what it seems like both these players are playing, at least on this game, is very focused more around just macroing up and going to that Roach War. But definitely on the next 2 maps in the series, those sort of wild, aggressive plays are going to probably feature a lot more prominently. For the moment, we do see both players going for a delayed gas, or actually Petraeus is still completely gasless. Jaedong, though, going for this delayed gas. And it is just going to be going up to a very gasless sort of opening. Both players relying on queens. Of course, the big thing when it's gasless is you don't have that fast Zergling speed. Notice these Zerglings quite slow walking across the map. There's no real threat to each player. They both know exactly that. And Petraeus actually, his vision being denied there by Jaedong. He actually hasn't seen the gas timing of Jaedong. So Petraeus has to be a little bit worried about that, whereas Jaedong poked in just deep enough to check that there was no gas geyser early on.
Do you think Petraeus is expecting Jaedong just to play out the exact same way? As Vani Research is in general a map where players don't like to be crazy aggressive unless they indeed truly trick their opponent. But this is not one of these maps where you randomly decide to make 12 Zerglings and see what I can do. Because I think out of all the maps in the current map pool, this is the easiest map to just defend your ramp. It's such a tiny little ramp into your main base while you already have your pocket expand. So maybe he's not too worried about anything?
I think you're spot on there, Roddy. This is just one of those maps, and even when you're on 3 bases, you've only got one entrance in there. Interestingly, though, Jaedong going for that nice fast lair, most likely going to be for Roach play. We will be finding out, and he does drop that evolution chamber. So Jaedong going to go for that very fast Roach speed, +1 range, very efficient Roach opening, while Petraeus in this side hasn't really shown his hand just yet. Ooh, looks like he's opting for that fast third build, and also those queens coming out, gonna hunt those overlords, gonna try and deny Jaedong's vision.
How do you like it that Jaedong is actually going up to layer in his natural rather than in his main base? Do you think something like that matters? Is it just taking a minor risk, hoping that he was going to check my main instead?
I think so. I think we've got some really, really nice, you know, just kind of hiding that information as much as possible. And it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in right now. Jaedong focusing on that Roach style play. Petraeus, he's going to go there eventually, but first of all, taking a much faster third base and getting that Zergling speed upgrade. Petraeus is going to be playing the more mobile game with those Zerglings to pressure, and then he's going to try and behind that, drone up his third base a little bit, and then defend from any Roach attack. Jaedong, on the other side, is having a much more efficient progression into the Roach style of the game, which is going to give him the potential to maybe do a very aggressive timing. Interestingly, that Zergling came in, and I think it did see those Zerglings popping out. So Jaedong making sure that he's going to be safe from this Speedling attack. He is already pumping out his Roaches, and it's going to be the job of these Speedlings not to fight the Roaches, but to threaten counterattacks, to cut off reinforcements.
Yeah, I feel Petraeus is setting himself up over here for a narrow window. I'm not even sure if that window truly exists. Of course, he would love to fight with with Speedlings only against Roaches that don't have their +1 yet. He's going to try to get a surround up on this hatchery from Jaedong, but Jaedong with his +1, it's more than halfway done. This is going to be, I mean, it's a very, very big, serious investment over here by Petraeus, which he obviously would love to get something out of. We're talking about 28 Zerglings.
That's a lot of Zerglings. He cannot afford to throw them away. Luckily for him, Jaedong's a little bit afraid. He is going to sacrifice the hatchery, and that's a really nice pickup for Petraeus. Petraeus cannot throw those Zerglings away. Just killing the hatchery isn't enough. Remember, Jaedong has such a fast Roach speed, such a fast +1. He has a very powerful Roach attack possibility. These Zerglings need to stay alive, threatening. They need to say, you need to defend at home. You can't attack and defend at the same time. And notice behind this, Petraeus, he's getting a little drone lead, and he's swapping into that Roach production himself, finding himself in a very nice position. I think Petraeus has got a comfortable, small lead here.
I think this is great. I think this is everything that he was hoping for. Nothing too crazy. You know, he didn't have to kill a whole lot of Roaches. All that he wanted is like, hey, I'm on 3 bases way before you. I'm going to have way more larvae to work with. And of course, he's aware of the fact that Jaedong is going to have slightly quicker Roach speed, but if you're in a defensive position and your opponent has Roach speed, I don't think it matters all that much. Of course, you have to make sure that you don't fall out of position, but by the time that Jaedong makes his way across the map, you know, Petraeus is going to have Roach speed as well. He's slightly down in upgrades, but I truly believe that the larva lead that he has for himself right now and the economic lead that he's building for himself over time, it is more than worth it. He's hitting kind of a gnarly supply block over here, perhaps a tiny bit nervous. That's a shame though, because this is really a moment where his supply could skyrocket if he wasn't supply block.
Nonetheless, we did see that nice income advantage. Even though he's actually down on workers, his workers are spread better across the bases. They're mining more efficiently. And so Petraeus is getting slightly ahead there. Of course, Jaedong with the faster +2, also going carapace. Jaedong's going to have a nice potential Roach timing, but on such a lengthy map with only one avenue to attack, it's a map which really, I think, panders to the defensive player. It's quite easy to defend just one angle from Roaches. You can use that defensive positioning and so on. And if you just look at this...
I love this. I truly love this, because the only thing that Jaedong truly had going for himself this game was that slightly quicker +2, and now Petraeus just says, not yet, sir, not yet. I'm going to try to catch up. I'm going to use Contaminate once or maybe even twice.
Oh, Jaedong's coming in for the same move himself. Can he equalize? He needs to hit the Evolution Chamber with the attack upgrade. It's very important for him to go for that. He needs to stop that one, and he actually stops the Carapace. That's probably the less important upgrade there, so that's actually really nice for Petraeus.
Yep, I think Petraeus doesn't mind it all that much, especially because +1 is in general a lot quicker than +2 anyways, and much more important is that he's even on those attack upgrades. So I think Petraeus is still quite okay with how this game is going. He's hitting almost another supply block, but this time he did have a lot of Roaches on the production tab, so it doesn't bother him that much. Throwing down the Bailing Nest as well, that's an interesting addition. It's something we'll see every now and then. Some Zergs like it. Very popular for a while, but has fallen a little bit out of fashion.
It's quite an aggressive style, isn't it, where you go for the Banelings, you add the Baneling speed. However, some players have been doing it in more of a defensive manner, saying if you add some Hydralisks in, it's really scary. So as a safety precaution, I'll get this Baneling nest. It's going to be interesting. With no other tech coming down, I think Petraeus does want to commit to those Banelings though. And especially when you get to max battles, you might start seeing some cool things from these players where they build a bunch of Spore Crawlers so that it eats up their drone supply, they build a bunch of fighting units and they cancel them, get the drones back and actually pop themselves over that 200 supply.
I think this very happy little Zergling or Changeling scout from Petraeus, if it would go into the main base of Jaedong and they would see that Roach1 wiggle, it would trigger the alarm bells. It's like, hey, why is something currently going on your Roach1? You're most likely getting Tunneling Claws in that case. Of course, something that is becoming more and more popular in ZvZ as well. Jaedong is going to try to sneak a couple of roaches during a fight, perhaps into the natural, into the main. And if you suddenly unburrow 3 roaches on multiple locations at once, before you know it, you can take down 15, 20 drones in the process and create a massive economic advantage for yourself. Petraeus unfortunately didn't send that Changeling into the main, and he doesn't really have any detection in any of his bases.
And he might just be assuming Jaedong's not going for it. Jaedong coming in here, just looking to pressure, just applying that pressure sort of passively, trying to distract Petraeus, and he's going to try and find an opportunity to split off a few roaches very soon, and he is going to try to sneak those around the back. Usually, Roach Burrow isn't used a lot on this map because there's not very many paths into your opponent's base. But just because of that, it's actually a big surprise when it does happen. And we see Jaedong now starting to split off some roaches, pulling his units back. Petraeus moving his entire army across the map, looking like he wants to go for this big Doom push. But Jaedong is getting a very deadly roach counterattack in at the same time.
Things can snowball really quickly from this point. Is Petraeus going to turn around or not? It doesn't seem like he has the Banelings. They're slow Banelings in the middle of the map, but they may actually connect with a couple of these roaches. Baneling speed is so close to finishing up, but it's just not ready just yet. There we go. Banelings finally start rolling, but Jaedong knows that he's doing some worker damage. On the other end, though, all of these roaches are trapped. There's almost no way out.
Where are they going to run to?
I have no idea.
This is actually getting a little bit scary for Jaedong. These roaches need to get out of here. These Banelings not getting the most efficient hits from Petraeus. Petraeus starting to add Hydralisks behind this as well. A big number of Infestors are coming out from Jaedong, and his roaches managed to slip around there, and they do manage to get away.
I would have loved to see Petraeus split up his forces over there. Instead of doing this ring around the Rosie and following the entire army with his big clump of roaches, imagine if he sends the Banelings from one side and he sends the roaches via the south side of that cliff. I think he would have been able to force Jaedong to take a fight there that he really wasn't looking for, especially not with Pathogen Glands on the way and with so many Infestors on the way. Petraeus has to be careful here,
There's
though.
so many Spine Crawlers and Infestors here. This is not a position Petraeus wants to fight in, but he's going in head first.
Yeah, this is no way that Petraeus wants to stick around here. He has to know that as well. He's going to take his losses, just cut it for now and retreat, because there's no way you can find in range of 6, 7, 8 Spine Crawlers, and let's not forget about 6 or 7 Fungal Growths as well.
No doubt Petraeus is feeling his heart rise up in his chest after that fight.
Yeah, that could have gone worse.
Nearly getting his whole army trapped. I mean, a few Fungals trapping his army there could have been disastrous. As it is, though, he's adding the Hydralisks in, which is going to give him a lot of punching power in this army, and he is beginning his own Infestor transition. Jaedong did use up a lot of his Infestor energy, so not really in a position to force the issue just yet, and his 4th base is actually a lot delayed. However, if we look at that worker count, we can see Petraeus not really making too much use of his 4th base just yet. Still at quite a low worker count, a very aggressive worker supply, freeing up more supply for that army.
I mean, Jaedong doesn't really want to be aggressive in this point, though, right? Like, he has Infestors, which is a strong defensive unit, and he's going up to Hive during all this. His +2 armor is about to finish up. Petraeus never started +2 armor, so Jaedong can even start +3 if he truly wants to. He's going to take the fight regardless. He's going to drop a Fungal or 2.
In the back doing a lot of damage, though. There's a big army advantage here for Petraeus, as a lot of Jaedong's roaches are on the other side of the map counter-attacking. They're getting a good trade-off, but can he defend at home? He's still got a lot of Spine Crawlers here. This isn't the hugest Roach Hydra army, and it's looking a little bit scary. Oh, the Fungals! That is massive!
Those are some serious money Fungals over here for Jaedong. A lot of those Hydras dropping rapidly in HP. The Spine Crawl is helping out as well, and let's not forget that Jaedong is doing some work on the other side of the map, and as long as he's stabilizing, as long as Jaedong is surviving, he's doing fine. He may be down a base, but he has more money in the bank, and he will be able to start his +3 attack upgrades real soon. And 3-3 roaches against 2-1, well, that is an unfair fight if I've ever seen one.
Oh, that's got to hurt his Petraeus. Not only taking damage at home, but also getting demolished in that front-on fight. We can see it reflected in that supply count now. And Jaedong just playing so patiently. Such a macro-intensive play from Jaedong. He's got his hive up. He'll be adding his upgrades soon. Petraeus does find those roaches in his base, does start cornering them. And Jaedong not going to get too much more damage there. But it doesn't matter. He's still got Infestors alive. He's gaining energy. He's got a huge ball of Hydras up with his army as well. This is a scary force.
Yeah, this army suddenly became 10 times more scary. The army of Jaedong, that is. Before it was just a bunch of roaches, but he's done such a phenomenal job in trading out roaches for drones left and right and still stabilizing at home and just becoming stronger and stronger himself while relying on static defenses.
Petraeus has got a lot of units in production, but he doesn't have them here, whereas Jaedong's entire army is out and together, and he's looking to take a really nice fight. Petraeus being very afraid to engage. He doesn't want to get fungled in any choke points. Jaedong also doesn't want to take a bad fight. Both players edging backwards and forwards. But remember, Jaedong has the 3-3 upgrades on the way. He's got more workers. He's got a bigger bank, so Jaedong doesn't need to rush things. If he can just keep picking away with things like this roach counterattack, it's going to do very, very well for him.
Yeah, has to be a tiny bit careful. Petraeus is getting has a couple of Infestors as well. Lands a fungal growth. Not bad.
Huge fungals for both sides, actually. Petraeus turning things around. The fungals going down on those Hydras, and that concave.
So
Jaedong's army is actually falling apart here.
Jaedong's army extremely exposed. Hydra have a lot of DPS, but they're also quite squishy, and especially if they land a fungal or two. The Infestors of Petraeus, that is. So Petraeus doing quite a good job there.
Those Infestors are going back, and they're getting killed. 2 Infestors going down to those roaches. Jaedong not only killing drones, but picking off those expensive tech units of Petraeus, and still managing to come out in a very good position here. Jaedong's 3-3 is getting closer and closer. He's up in supply. This is looking to be a very nice position for Jaedong right now.
Yeah, it was an expensive fight for Jaedong because he did lose a lot of Hydralisks, but it's okay because he has done so much economic damage throughout the last 5 to 10 minutes in this game with all those roaches that he's been trading out, you know, the use of Tunnel and Claws, just doing a really good job. And look at his army right now. He's still richer. He's getting Vipers in the mix as well. I mean, Petraeus is getting his very first Vipers too, but +3 missile attacks is so much later for Petraeus than it is for Jaedong, and Jaedong is also getting the armor, and there's just no way that Petraeus has money for that.
Vipers on both sides coming out. Now, if there's one thing Petraeus is famous for, it's actually his ability to use Fungal Growth and Blinding Cloud in combination so well. He is one of the absolute best pro gamers when it comes to using those spells, and it becomes very, very difficult to attack into a player who's using both Fungal Growth and Blinding Cloud defensively. So we're actually getting to a point in the game where, yes, Jaedong's going to have a 3-3 potential timing, but to force his way in against Petraeus is going to be near impossible. And this game may actually start to drag on a little bit more into a war of attrition.
I mean, Vani Research can be a very difficult map to attack into your opponent as well. I was kind of wondering when are we going to see the first Spires go down. And in all honesty, I'm a little bit surprised to see Petraeus being the player to drop the Spire first. Well, he's been like economically struggling over the last 5 to 10 minutes in this game. I kind of expected the Spire of Jaedong before because, you know, Broodlords can be a very good siege unit to start off a fight and force your opponent to take an engagement he doesn't really want to take.
And this is an area of Zerg vs. Zerg which doesn't get explored very often. Usually the game does end before we get to this point. Oh, very nice snipe on that hatchery from Jaedong. It is a very hard position to actually force an attack, though. So Jaedong here is looking to just increment out these advantages, and he does want to trade here. He knows he's got the bigger bank, but he can't get too over-eager.
Do you think he could have pushed the issue a little bit harder while having this, you know, upgrade advantage?
He may have been able to. Now, interestingly enough, those Hydralisks of Jaedong actually seem to be moving a little bit slower. I'm not sure if he remembered to get that Hydralisk movement speed upgrade.
He has it.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Yep.
Just imagining things.
I double check for you. First Fungal will land, but only connects with 2 Roaches. Fungal of Jaedong doesn't connect with a whole lot more, though. Of course, Roach is not the most expensive unit to lose in the game.
Whoa.
Those Fungals are a lot more juicy, and this might actually trigger Jaedong to go for it. He's over 200 supply as well, which he's of course done with the burrow trick or with the drone trick. Blinding Cloud's going down. This is just madness pick.
Blinding Clouds coming down all over the battle. Fungal Growth going down. Petraeus' supply is dropping so quickly. His units funneling into that choke point. Jaedong forcing a very nice engagement here. Look at this overwhelming Roach Hydras just pushing through the Spy Crawlers, pushing through the Roaches and Hydras. Jaedong here showing his dominance.
Yeah, great engagement there by Jaedong. Finally got the Fungals he was hoping for. His Hydralisks were able to do a lot of damage. And even though he can finish the game right right here and right now. There are so many units for him on the way. 20 Hydralisks, 27 Roaches. As soon as Jaedong gets all those units out of those hatcheries, he's just going to go all over again. He's going to do the same thing. And with the economy that Petraeus has, it's going to be almost impossible for our New Zealander to stabilize.
That gold base kicking in for Jaedong there. Very nice income on 5 bases. Jaedong, he wanted to come out of this group in first place. He won't settle for anything less than making it through out of this group. And now he's feeling that confidence. Look at him setting up this concave. Going to come in for this final fight. Petraeus madly trying to hang on, but he is forced out. He does have to call GG.
Jaedong wins game number 1 on Vani Research Station off the back, I would say, of some very nice Tunneling Claw Roach play. I truly think that is what made the difference in this game. I felt early on things were going the way that Petraeus kind of wanted to. He made all the Zerglings. He was able to deny that third base. He was able to stabilize himself, create a small economic lead. I think that supply block he hit at 102, I think that really hurted him, because that wasn't a supply block of I have units on the way. There was nothing on the production tab. He was not even starting an Overlord yet. 102 out of 102. Takes full 30 seconds, and then you kind of give away the advantage you've built up for yourself while sniping that hatchery.
You definitely can't give away those little edges. And here was the beautiful move from Jaedong. I was saying it's hard to force a good fight, but look at this. Those fungals on those expensive units in the middle forces Petraeus to commit to the engagement. And then the Blinding Cloud, look at his units. They can't shoot, so they're all just trying to headbutt into the concave of Jaedong's forces. An absolutely beautifully orchestrated battle. Even though there was nice Blinding Clouds from Petraeus, half of his army was already dead by the time they hit.
And let's not forget that Jaedong still had an upgrade advantage in this phase in the game. It was still 3-3 against 2-2. And of course, you know, Petraeus was throwing a little bit of money away as well by already trying to prepare for the next phase of ZvZ, throwing down that Spire. While Jaedong had a complete opposite plan. He's like, no, I'm going to morph my drones into Spore Crawlers so I can get an army as big as I possibly want to. So he attacks with 207, 208 supply of 3-3 Roach Hydra against a player that's like around 195 with 2-2. You know, that is a difference.
Oh yeah, it takes immense confidence to move into that sort of situation, but Jaedong, he sensed it, and he's always been a guy to probe around, poke and pry, and once he finds that weakness, he shoves his army into it, and he just thrusts right through that Zerg defense. It was really, really powerful moves from Jaedong.
The second map of this best of 3 is going to be played on Echo. Once more, the winner of this series will move on and face off against Stardust in the winner's match of Group D, while the loser will move on to the lower bracket where Liquid Red is waiting for his opponent. It's definitely not over yet though. I think Petraeus played a very solid game 1. He shows he can mess with the big boys, but he's going to have to do a little better in game number 2.
Spawning here at the top left of Echo, we have the Tyrant. It is Jaedong.
And over here on the right bottom side of the map, we have the man from New Zealand representing My Insanity. It is first time in the round of 16. Give it up for Petraeus.
Looking focused in the booth. Petraeus wants this. He knows that last game was quite close. It did slip away from him, but he's got to be feeling confident. He definitely took the fight to the Tyrant there, showed he could give him a good battle. And here on Echo, once again, it's going to be a somewhat defensive map, a map where it very likely will go to that sort of later Roach stage. And I am very curious to see if these players are going to open up this gasless. I think really, though, what we need to be thinking about is where are these players' mindsets at? Jaedong, we could see him rubbing his eyes there, trying to clear his head, thinking about what he's going to do next. Petraeus also looking very focused, but almost a little bit angry in that booth at how that last game turned out.
Yeah, he always has that look a little bit, though, despite the fact that he's such a friendly guy. He doesn't really say a whole lot, but you do know that he is a very friendly guy. He's going to go for the economic approach over here in game number 2 on Echo. Jaedong doing the exact same thing. They probably took a look at each other's build order. It's like, you know, we went pool first, both in the first game. Like, well, we can have a gentleman's agreement just to go hatch first, you know?
Interestingly, though, there's still that sort of momentum advantage from Jaedong, going for the 16 pool, because he's up a game in this best of 3. So he can take a little bit of a risk there, whereas Petraeus is saying, I don't want to die. So he went for that very fast 14 spawning pool after his hatchery, which does curtail his economy just a little bit. Jaedong on the other side, you know, feeling comfortable to get that gas down, really having a clean economic opening, absolutely no inhibitions. Petraeus on the other side saying, I got to play this safe. There's a good chance Jaedong does maybe something aggressive to try and close this out fast, so absolutely no chances taken on Petraeus' side.
I do feel if you put things in perspective that Echo is a map where it's slightly easier to be aggressive than on Vani Research Station, correct? Also,
Absolutely,
especially like if Jaedong wants to do something similar with, you know, Tunneling Claws, Burrowed Roaches once more, this is a map where you can lose track of them really quickly, while on Vani, normally if you have a Spore Crawler or an Overseer on top of your ramp, you're covering 2 out of your first 3 bases against Tunneling Claws.
It is definitely, I think, a little bit easier on Vani, but because there is such a tight choke, it is still somewhat easy to defend here on Echo. But usually, this map is much more likely to see Zergling speed earlier on in the game. We do see both players have taken a much faster gas, Jaedong especially, and we do see that Zergling speed kicking in for him as he sends out some Zerglings to scout.
Petraeus has scouted it as well. This Overlord went all the way in, and this time was able to see that extractor, was able to click on it. Jaedong on the other end this time could not confirm there was an extractor, but he may have seen one of the drones carrying gas. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if he actually did or not, so I think the Zergling Scout is actually very important. I don't believe he had vision. He may have just barely seen the gas mining, but these Zerglings, if they get in, they can really confirm what's going on. They do make it up the ramp. One Zergling. Oh, Petraeus pulls drones to try to stop it, but that Zergling is in. He's going to get a full scout of the main base, and that's going to give Jaedong peace of mind. He's going to click on that gas. He sees, oh, you've just finished mining 100 gas. I've got a couple minutes before Zergling speed could hit. So Jaedong is going to feel free to cut corners here. He's going to feel free saying, you can't attack me for quite a while without that Zergling speed. I can just pump out drones as much as I want.
Yeah, Jaedong mined the amount of gas that he would be needed or would be required for Zergling speed, but he actually doesn't decide to go for it. We'll most likely just stack it up and go for a very quick layer once more. He's working on a couple of Overlords outside of his main base. These 2 Queens could potentially take care of it. It's very unlikely Petraeus is going to make some desperate move trying to save it, as Zergling speed is just long ways off of finishing. So this is nice for Jaedong. This is not something you want to lose as Petraeus in this phase in the game.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hiccup in your build order, having to replace that Overlord so early on. And I mean, just looking at Jaedong's play, you can see how, as I said before, uninhibited his play is. He's just saying, yeah, I showed you some gas, but I'm not even going to use it. I'm just going to get my lair, Roach Warren, Evolution Chamber. And this seems to be the structure which Jaedong is enjoying right now, loving going straight up to that Roach play.
I do love what Petraeus is doing over here. He's going up to 3 hatcheries way before his opponent, perhaps picking up on the fact like, you know, I kind of think if you would have gone for Zergling speed, you would have probably showed me a couple Zerglings by now. I would have probably seen some Speedlings running around. Since I don't see anything, there's a very big chance that my opponent went straight up to layer and never decided to get Zergling speed. So Petraeus feels confident enough
the Ling Flood, yeah.
to go up to 3 bases immediately.
This Ling Flood, though, he's building a lot of Zerglings here. I feel like he's only at 33 drones. I think he needs to get a good amount of damage done here, but Jaedong's taken no chances. He's actually built the Spine Crawler, and he does have Roaches starting to pop out. He's got a Transfuse there. Petraeus cannot break down this wall. He does recognize that, does pull back. Like, these Zerglings are useful. They delay the 3rd base, but when your opponent's already out mining you on their 2 bases for so long as Jaedong has here, I feel like Jaedong is very comfortable in his position. He can just push out slowly, take that 3rd base a little bit later, and look at this, just losing a few Zerglings here or there. I don't think Petraeus can afford this.
Now, I almost feel it would have been better for Petraeus to just hide those Lings at home. Like, even if you've already made them, just be like, okay, I'm only going to show a couple, and the moment Jaedong tries to go up to 3 bases, then just try to make something happen with it, because it's very unlikely you're going to break a Spine Crawler with 2 Queens next to it and Roaches already in production.
A little bit of a lack of information there from Petraeus, I think, not really knowing whether or not he'd get the damage done. And definitely, you're right. Now that Jaedong's prepared for it, look at that, taking down those back rocks, saying, your Zerglings aren't going to get in and cancel my 3rd this game, buddy. And Petraeus is taking down these rocks, trying to open up some paths. Meanwhile, he's droning up at home. Both players actually looking like they are quite drone-centric. I'd almost say Petraeus is being a little bit greedy with how many drones he's building, but looking like he will swap into that Roach production. Meanwhile, Jaedong already adding the 2nd Evolution Chamber, looking like he's gearing up for that sort of 12, 13 minute mark stage of the game where you've got carapace upgrades and +2 range. Jaedong not looking to press the issue just yet.
Now, Petraeus hasn't seen it. I think it's going to be quite difficult. If you take a look where the Overseer for Petraeus is, it's way out of position when it comes to, you know, actually spotting that Evolution Chamber, the 2nd one, which is in the back of the Natural. So that's going to be a very difficult scout. Other than that, I do like the way that Petraeus is playing this. Even when you make this many Zerg Zerglings. Of course, you always hope for more when you're playing a ZvZ, but he still has them. And Jaedong, you have to be a tiny bit worried about those links, because those links, they can be very annoying in forcing your roaches to, you know, sort of stay around in a fight where they actually kind of want to leave, but then you can't leave because those Zerglings are quicker and they will just block your axes, and the roaches from Petraeus will be able to catch up. So even if they're not the most intimidating force out on the map, Jaedong is still, it's still something that Jaedong has to keep in the back of his mind.
And here we do see a passive push from Petraeus. We call it a passive push because he isn't really trying to actually commit to this. Notice he's been droning behind it. He's just going to probe around, try to force a reaction, see what Jaedong's up to, and then he will back off. Look at that. Doesn't even move into fighting range, just showing the roaches, showing those units, and then pulling back from that. And even though Petraeus hasn't got that second evolution chamber started, look, he does have a little supply lead, and he's actually going straight up to that infestation pit. Jaedong now doing the same, and it looks like both players recognizing how narrow the attacking positions are on this map, realizing fungal growth will be huge in that scenario.
Pretty much a mirror image, despite the fact that a couple of Zerglings have been produced by Petraeus early on. Other than that, it's a very, very even game. Once more, if you've just joined us, it's the very first time that Petraeus has made it to the round of 16 of WCS. He's been getting a lot of love in the foreign scene. Everyone knows that he's one of the better Zergs out there, but he's waiting for that one result that everyone will always refer to. And this could very well be that day for Petraeus. If he turns this series around and wins against Stardust, then everyone will always be like, well, he made it to the top 8 in Canada, which would just be such a massive achievement for him.
Of course, Jaedong on the other side, trying to make sure he has no hiccups here, wanting to clean this up. Very interesting variation in the style here. Petraeus skipping the pathogen gland upgrade, just going straight for 3 infestors. What this tells us is Petraeus is planning just to get a couple of infestors. They're going to be great against banelings, great at controlling space, and behind that, he'll probably be adding that Hydralisk Den. We see it go down now. So he's going to be going more Roach Hydra focused with just a couple of infestors, whereas Jaedong, on the other hand, getting 6 infestors out and +2 carapace, and then the Hydra Den. Jaedong is actually in a very defensive stance here. If you look at the supplies, notice Jaedong has stopped building roaches. He's identified Petraeus is playing defensively, and Jaedong himself is saying, I'm not going to max out on roaches, I'm going to max out on the perfect composition. And if Petraeus doesn't push soon, I think this is just looking so good for Jaedong. He's going to have such an army advantage.
I mean, would Petraeus really push if well, he has a much quicker Hive? Just now the Hive is on the way for Jaedong, which he actually started a lot later than Petraeus did. So I don't really think that Petraeus has to push if he's going to get access to +3 missile attacks a lot quicker.
To some extent, I agree with you, Roddy, but without the infestor count and the ability to reproduce infestors is severely curtailed for him because he does not have that pathogen glands. Petraeus has invested a lot more in this sort of mid-game roaches to be safe, and I feel like Jaedong's just cutting a lot of corners. This is such a smart reaction to how Petraeus has been playing so far, and we do see this big supply lead for Petraeus, but it's not really giving him any advantages. He's not pressuring with it. He's not forcing Jaedong to do anything else.
Maybe
Jaedong's just being so greedy here.
Maybe just 1 or 2 Vipers and then Petraeus will go, because he realized, like, okay, if I shove everything right now, it's going to be very hard to get a cost-effective trade, but maybe if I get access to Vipers quicker than my opponent, I can land a couple of lightning clouds and force Jaedong into a fight that he maybe doesn't want to take.
I think that may be his goal here. I mean, the Vipers is something he has used to such great success in the past. Last game, of course, getting on the back foot earlier on, and then Jaedong punishing him and actually getting the better blinding clouds. I don't know if that's necessarily dented Petraeus' confidence at all. And both these players are just kind of posturing around. This is such an odd Zerg versus Zerg. We so rarely see these late game ZvZs where both players are so passive.
I mean, the first 2 Vipers are on the way for Petraeus. He also started +3 missile attacks, but, you know, we have full access. We see everything. As a player, it's pretty hard to see the main base over and over again and have an excellent idea of like, hey, okay, I'm going to have +3, you know, missile attacks 50 seconds before you. That's something that we can see very easy because we have access to all the information. But as a player, Petraeus may have the idea that he has quicker +3, but of course he can't be 100% sure. And the last thing you want to do is run into Fungal Grove thinking you have better upgrades, and suddenly your opponent is on the eco upgrades, and then you're going to have a very, very bad time.
Especially here on Echo, this map has a lot of choke points. Notice the players are both breaking down rocks around the map to try to open up more avenues for flanking, for engaging, but there are still a lot of just natural choke points on the map. It's very hard to actually clear those up. And what we mean by those choke points is, of course, any area where pathogen, where the fungal growth, the blinding cloud is just going to demolish the army. And it really becomes a battle of who can cast better spells at this point. They're just so important at this stage of the game. We see both players really not rushing into into any situation. Petraeus even putting down a good bunch of spine crawlers at his 4th base.
I am starting to get a tiny bit worried for Petraeus because I kind of felt like he had perhaps a window for a while. Maybe he can land a Fungo and a Blinding Cloud over here. That would change everything, but he is so heavy on the Roach count that I have the feeling the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that Jaedong is just going to absolutely demolish that army composition of Petraeus. He's still on 50 Roaches, and Jaedong was on a similar amount of Roaches on Vani, but Jaedong did a phenomenal job in trading out those Roaches for drones. I think Petraeus knows this as well. He's probably like, man, the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get for me. Looking for an opening, but fighting is hard in ZvZ.
Oh, abducting a Viper. Oh, but it does go down. Really cute pickup from Jaedong there. That's actually so expensive. That is 200 gas. If you look at both of these players' banks in the bottom of the screen, you can see there is way more minerals than gas. These players, they do not want to throw away any of those important gas units. That's what it's all about right now. And oh, the drone is in Spine Crawler prison there. The gas income actually being slowed down a little bit there for Petraeus as that drone spazzes out.
Hopefully he will notice one day. No. Maybe he should drop the gas. Maybe then he can slide through.
Jaedong's looking hungry now. He's coming forward. Look at this positioning. Positioning is everything here. Petraeus spreading his units out, trying to make sure they're not clumped up. Oh, huge fungals from the low ground from Petraeus, but a very nice counter fungal growth. No high ground vision here for Pet. He can't actually chain fungal those, and he does lose quite a few of his important infestors and hydras.
That was indeed a great fungal, but it's not great enough to actually just storm up that ramp, because then the fungals of Jaedong are going to be much greater than your initial fungals. Jaedong is going to try to go for it, and I think this time Jaedong can land good fungals, and he lands phenomenal blinding clouds as well. But of course Petraeus is doing the same thing on the other side.
Both units are just clashing here. Jaedong seem to be headbutting a little bit more. Petraeus seem to be getting the better trade here. Those spine crawlers in the back being the deciding factor here. I think Petraeus is going to hold on, just barely going to defend this army. Jaedong does have to withdraw. Fantastic sort of transition from Jaedong though. He's going to 10 Corruptors. That's going to be a big Broodlord tech switch, whereas Petraeus, as the defender, felt a lot more threatened. So rather than thinking ahead to that sort of Broodlord stage, he's remaxed on mostly Roaches, some Hydras, and a Viper. He isn't going to have that sort of front-on army strength that those Broodlords are going to have though. With this army, you just cannot fight Broodlords head-on.
No, I think you're spot on there. I felt it was kind of like a panic rematch, like, oh god, that wasn't really the fight I wanted. Like, just hold down that R button and make as many Roaches as possible. And I think by now Petraeus is probably aware of the fact, like, oh man, was this actually the correct choice? Did I spend my money in the correct way? And by the time that he's actually going to be able to attack, he's going to face the first Broodlords from Jaedong, as he has 10 Broodlords on the way. Like, you can't fight 10 Broodlords with just Hydrolis. He's going to need his own Vipers, maybe even Corruptors again, but this is just going to be such a difficult fight for Petraeus, and I think it's safe to say that he has remaxed on the wrong army over here.
Most certainly. That being said, Broodlords are very immobile. This is a big map. Petraeus needs to pull back the moment he realizes these Broodlords are there, and he needs to counterattack, but he's putting himself into the worst position possible. Jaedong, he's going to, if he lands some fungals here, these Broodlords are just going to be too powerful, and Jaedong's coming forward with the infestors. Very nice pickoffs at the back, catching almost all of Petraeus' infestors. Petraeus not looking happy in the booth there, pulling his army back, realizing he's in a desperate spot. His army cannot get cornered. He needs to avoid the Broodlords and counterattack as much as possible. Jaedong is looking to shepherd his units into a corner of the map where he can force them to fight. And his Roach Hydra is actually going to try and attack to force Petraeus home to defend.
I mean, Petraeus is perhaps looking for an opening where these units are out of position. This is really weird. Just abducts going down on both sides. Vipers pulling each other over and over again. But Petraeus knows that he just can't engage that army, so he's going to try to run around, buy time for himself. There are a lot of Corruptors on the way, but this is becoming incredibly expensive.
He's losing all the tech units. His Roaches were counterattacking on the 4th, but I don't think they've done too much damage just yet. Jaedong had a lot of spine crawlers down there, and his Roach Hydra responds in time, only losing 4 drones. Sure, Petraeus is getting home, but look at this. He's lost so many units in the retreat. He doesn't have all those spellcaster units with their energy, whereas Jaedong still does. He's rebuilding, but I don't know if this couple of Corruptors and Broodlords morphing is going to be enough here. The Broodlords aren't going to be up in time. He might even be better off just leaving those as Corruptors. I don't know if Jaedong is going to be able to break him here.
I mean, the Broodlords are a little bit exposed. The Hydras are almost in range of shooting at them, so that's a kind of like the best case scenario that Petraeus could have hoped for, but there is a good chance that it's still not not going to be enough. The Broodlord number for Jaedong is just ridiculously high. While he's staying maxed out, he's remaxing on Hydras, and Jaedong will win his first series here in Toronto, 2-0 over Petraeus in the end, I'd say pretty convincing manner.
Very, very convincing and very impressive. There was no real gimmicks to Jaedong's play there. That was pretty much just muscle. I'm going to push you over, and surprisingly patient, I think.
Yeah, he showed great patience. I think he showed phenomenal patience, and he also just showed phenomenal understanding of the maps. On any given moment, it felt like he always had the right idea of which units he wanted. Particularly impressed with Vani, you know, the way that he traded out those drones. But let's just hear from the man himself as he's on stage with Chobra.
Thank you very much. And as we just saw, ZvZ is still on point. Jaedong wins his game, and he goes to the winner's match of Group D. Another big round of applause for EG Jaedong, everyone. Now, Jaedong, you had a bit of a break in Season 1 due to unforeseen circumstances, and you talk about how, well, you feel ready, you come back. You're talking about how you were excited to come play in front of the Canadian crowd. But now having played one match and taking the win, how do you feel? I mean, is the rust all gone and you're ready to go for that champion title this weekend?
Of course. I know you guys wanna see my victory, so.
All right, yeah, crowd's pretty excited to see Jaedong come back. Now, there was a fun moment in Game 1 when you were waiting for your infestors to come out and your roaches were just running around Petraeus' army in the center of the map. I mean, were you a little bit nervous that you might get caught, or were you like, oh, I'll just take 5-10 more seconds and then I can continue the game? What was going through your mind there?
If I get a little time, and then I get investor fungal skill, so just try roach moving around.
Yeah, well, it was pretty successful. Made the full roundabout, bought himself time. All right, well, you're up 2-0 in the round of 16. You talked about it earlier. You think everyone here wants to see you take that victory. Are you still confident, though? Is Jaedong still in the same form? Are you still that just massive, strong player that's going to come through and take that trophy? How confident are you?
Actually, it's just the first match done, and it's not advanced round of 16 yet. So I'm really cannot wait for ES winners match. So you guys can watch my getting better my skill.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a big round of applause for EG Jaedong as he moves on to the winner's match of Group D.
Thank you very much, Chobra, and congratulations to Jaedong. A fantastic performance and a very well executed 2-0, and he goes through to the winner's match to play against Stardust. But before we get into that here, I'm joined by a very special guest on the desk. It is Mr. David Kim, everybody, who joins us here to talk a little bit about that game. It was a fun game. We watched it up here, all three of us. It was Todd as well. It was a very cool series by JD.
Yeah, for sure.
What were some of the things that you thought was, that stood out when you watched that series?
I thought the first game, if Jaedong hit a little bit later, after the baneling speed was done, I kind of thought maybe Petraeus could have taken it.
Yeah, it was definitely a worrying moment there, Todd, at the first there. And that's kind of how ZvZ is developed. And I think one of the key reasons why we see very roach-heavy styles is the investment to move to another level in the tech choice is risky. Whether it be baneling speed, whether it be the Hydralisk Den, whether it be the infestors, it takes a lot of time to get them into play. And you can get strung by attacks there, right, Todd?
Yeah, it seems like sometimes players are really, really scared to tech, so they just stay on roaches for like a very long time. But these days, we've seen a lot more attempts to try and reach something else. Banelings, infestors here as well, with the Jaedong who read the situation really well, bought himself time. And I mean, as much as you can say, well, Petraeus could have just attacked and killed him, well, it's not that easy when you're playing against Jaedong or a player of this caliber.
What is, I mean, we've got you here now, I might as well ask you, what are some of the big differences in ZvZ WCS now and what we just saw, especially looking at Legacy of the Void? What are the big differences between the two?
So I would say the biggest things are obviously the Ravager and the Lurkers. Ravagers are much closer to get to, and then the Lurkers really shut down the mass roach play, which is very common, like you guys just talked about. But on top of that, we've also nerfed the Spore Crawler damage a little bit against air units. So we'll see more, not only more Mutalisk play, but also hopefully Corruptors too, because their ability is really good against buildings.
Well, do you think by bringing the Spore Crawlers back down a little bit, we start to see heavy Mutalisk play overall? And if so, what's the direct counter to that then?
Hope not, because since we've added so much damage to it, the plus bio damage, I think there's room where we can go down to, where we don't go back all the way to Mutalisk only play, but we still have a mix of both.
All right. Todd, question at all for David?
Yeah, I wonder right now, you know, with Legacy of the Void being in beta and, you know, quite a few players are playing, giving feedback. How do you like how the meta is evolving, basically, from the feedback you're getting and like from trying to change the game and all that?
I think the meta is very difficult to tell right now in Legacy of the Void because so many people are playing across different skill levels. There is no set pro level like tournaments going on, things like that. But I think the events like the one here this weekend, like the Archon Mode tournament, things like that, as they happen more and more, we'll learn more about the metagame and we'll adjust the game accordingly.
Have you managed to go down and check some of the Red Bull Archon tournament out, or is this a thing for tomorrow and Sunday?
I saw a couple games, but I think like tomorrow and the day after, especially the finals, I'm pretty excited about because there's popular players such as Huck, Violet,
Scarlet,
all those guys playing. So.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Of course, that's scheduled on Sunday. We're going to be playing the Archon Tournament Grand Finals on the main stage here on Sunday, right before the WCS Grand Finals for Season 2. Let's take a quick look at the bracket, though, just to update everybody at home, as, of course, we're still continuing with Group D, and we have one more match remaining. And, of course, it's the winner's match. All you Jaedong fans out in the crowd, don't go anywhere. He is going to be playing against Stardust, in a game that we've seen over the years have a bit of a budding rivalry between each other, where Stardust has kept Jaedong away from winning tournaments in the past. Rhett and Petraeus will go head-to-head tomorrow to face off for elimination. An interesting group, the way that it's played out. What are your thoughts? I might as well, while you're up here, get your opinion on this too. Stardust and Jaedong, what are some things you're looking forward to with watching this?
So I think both players we haven't seen a lot of recently, so I'm kind of excited to see what kind of strats they use, what have they been practicing on their own while they've been kind of out of the highest level scene for a little while. So I'm kind of excited to just see what happens. Yeah,
we've seen with Protoss versus Zerg, when you're looking at the Protoss perspective, Todd, we got a lot of very fast third Nexus being taken, support basic from Zealot Sentry into heavy Stalker play with +2 attack, pushing towards +3. Is that what we're expecting from Stardust here?
No.
No?
We're not expecting anything from Stardust because he can do literally anything. It's crazy. Like, playing against him must be a nightmare if you're a Zerg player. Already as a Protoss, it can be tricky, but I actually did a little bit of my homework because I'm going to be casting the next series, and I looked into what he did against Red. Even from what I heard, is like, I'm having a hard time exactly picturing what happened in that series. So this poor Jaedong is going to have a lot of scouting to do if he wants to be able to do well.
All right, then, come on, David, tell us, who do you want to win? Or who do you want to win?
In this group, I was actually cheering for Red because I saw him practice until really late last night. So I guess it doesn't matter who wins this one.
Who do you reckon wins out of Jaedong Stardust? You can tell us. No one's listening.
I want to say Jaedong because I know everyone out there is cheering for Jaedong a little bit more so than Stardust.
Safe answer there, David. Safe answer. Good job. All right, thank you very much for joining us up here. We'll have more from David Kim over the next couple of days. We'll be up here on the desk for tomorrow for a couple of questions and a couple of talks. And on Sunday, we'll be conducting a full-out interview with David Kim, discussing multiple different topics and, of course, Legacy of the Void. Stay tuned because it's time for Jaedong and Stardust.